Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Denise. Nice to see you. Good morning, Aurora. Nice to see you. It's a beautiful day in College Station, Bryan area. Hope it's pretty where you are. Okay, everyone, it looks like they sent out the agenda. I've just received it, so please check your email boxes for that agenda. It will also have another attachment of a PDF document, and I received it at 10:25. So please check your email box for the agenda and an additional attachment.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Let me open up here. I want to welcome everybody this morning, and I'm thrilled to have you. You're seeing my backyard here in Live Oak, Texas. I hope you're having a pleasant weather where you are. We got a good agenda for today, and I want to start moving through it. And I want to apologize for the last minute agenda. We sent one yesterday as a draft, and then we got one out this morning. And up until about 7 minutes ago, we were editing a draft copy of the remote testing letter, which I know a lot of you want. We sent a very rough draft last week. This is a much cleaner draft with more information. So I'm going to spend some time on that because that's the topic of the day, or definitely one of the topics of the day. So I want to get you a draft copy of it. It's not our practice to typically do that, but right now we've got to be more just in time than more following the rules of the game that we typically follow. And I want to thank Fabiana and Mahalia for helping me out there in the last minute. We had a few tweaks we made, so that was the delay. So let's go into our agenda here, and I'm going to share my screen and pull up our agenda here. And let's see, how we looking there?
Looks good.
Okay. So some general updates. Really, the first thing I want to mention here is number one. I'm going to enlarge that for everybody. Updates to local websites. We are still finding that a lot of you guys have not updated local websites, and that's something we really need to do. We're getting lots of calls from people that are becoming unemployed, looking for where to go for services, and it's very difficult if we're referring them to a website that doesn't have any up-to-date information on it in terms of what to do in terms of remote. I know that's difficult, though. Some of y'all will probably have very real constraints with getting web updates and stuff like that with your organizations. I understand, but please go back and see if you can make that a priority. It really will help us out as we go into the summer. We may have more summer traffic than we typically do. I don't know, but with the unemployment the way it is, we're going to see a lot more people coming to our system, I believe. I think yesterday Texas has had 2 million claims filed for unemployment insurance. And to give you some perspective, that does sound like a big number. I think there's like 12 million workers in Texas, individuals that are in the workforce. So 2 million out of 12 million are unemployed right now or have filed unemployed claims. That's a lot. And many of them are underskilled, of course. So they're going to be coming to us, getting that website open and keeping the lights on. Very important for us right now. And many of y'all are doing a great job. And some of the websites are really superb. So I appreciate that. With that, I want to see if there's any questions on the websites or any information, and I'll stop there and take some questions. Do we have anything in the chat?
No, sir.
Okay. Let me get the chat up on my screen. I'm operating on one screen today, guys. We'll proceed on with the remote testing. And I want to give you a little bit of background before we look at the test letter. First off, we're tracking information on all of the remote tests. And I want to give a big shout out to Tracy Hendricks and Robin, who've been working so hard on helping us, and Lori on my team, kind of be on these webinars and phone calls with the test publishers, staying up to date, briefing us. It's been a great team effort. TCAL's been doing such a great assist here in keeping us up to date on all kinds of things because there are lots of inputs coming in. But the NRS tests are looking good in terms of deployment. Last week, almost a week ago, Friday, we had over 600 people trained on the BEST 2.0 remote administration. And remember, for any of these tests, you need to be go through the remote training. It's a specific type of training. 600 of y'all took us up on that, and that's fantastic. So we need to make sure that we're following those procedures, but we are getting the volume in. And I know some of you, I heard a few schools, you know, are basically getting everybody trained because now we're working one-on-one with students, not these big groups that we're used to, and you're going to need a lot more people trained. Looks like TABE is going to be the next one to come online, and we're going to see that very shortly here. I think they sent some draft guidance out last week. And if somebody could remind me in the chat, one of my team, or if Lori wants to chime in, Tracy, somebody let me know when we think that's going to hit the street. I think it's this week or next on the DRC guidance on TABE testing.
Well, the webinar is tomorrow.
Okay, so the big webinar is tomorrow. That's correct. And that's going to be the Texas specific rollout. And we're happy about how that's going. So with that and the BEST, we're going to be really getting at least 2 major test systems up and available remotely. And I'll have T-Calls talk about more about that TABE testing in a moment here, because I want to make sure everybody's clear on what needs to happen there in registration. But the CASAs, I think it's trailing a little bit, but it's going to get there. So those of you that are doing CASAs, don't lose hope. I know we had a question last week. I can't remember who it was from, about needing to switch tests. If the TABE comes online and you use CASAs, do you need to switch to the TABE? Don't worry about doing stuff like that. I think they're all going to be online. It's going to be a little staggered, but let's have patience, because I think it's way more onerous to swap tests than it is to just wait a week or two for the additional guidance to come out. So that webinar for the BEST 2.0 is posted now as a course on the PD portal. So if you missed that and want to get staff trained up on that, welcome to do that. Tracy posted here that the TABE 11-12 proctoring guide's available at a link there that she put into the chat. So you might want to check that out after the call. You'll want to listen to this call first, because I know it's enticing to go look at that, but let's listen to the call because we got more up-to-date information coming out. Anything else on NRS tests in terms of training, or any questions, you can put them in the chat. I'm kind of guiding the chat here and looking at it.
There was one question from Denise Purdue.
Hi, Denise, out in Odessa.
Is there a sample of a great website with the information needed to publish for this season? I think this is in regards to getting their websites updated. Looking for a recommendation of if you'd seen anybody's.
Oh, some local websites. Yeah, why don't we, here's what I'll do. And I have a few of them that I looked at. Amarillo comes to mind as one. But why don't we, I'll ask my team to help me get a list of good sites together. If y'all could just send those over to Maria, and Maria, I'll make you the point of contact. Send her any good local websites for providers that have nice pandemic related response info. Some of them are very well thought out. And I'm glad that folks have had time to breathe and do that, because that's your landing spot now, and people aren't coming to your school. So you gotta really spend some time on that, but there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. We have some good models out there. Thanks for the question, Denise, out there in Odessa. So
Larry.
Uh-huh.
Larry Zimmerman has a question. Can we use the remote test for both baseline and progress testing?
Yes, the remote tests are behaving just as a regular test does in terms of performance. You're just doing it remotely, so you can use it for the same purposes. And our guidance letter, which I'll go through in a minute here, is going to kind of outline some of that information. I suspect this will be an area that's going to evolve quite a bit as we kind of move through these rollouts. So it's definitely one to have maybe a staff member in particular tracking the emails on remote testing and the guidance from publishers. I know Department of Education, I was emailing with them this morning. They've got some new information coming out also on serving new students and performance. So I think the summer is going to be busy in terms of little updates, and you guys are good at keeping up with that, and we'll do our best to keep up with that too. Great question, Larry, there from the Northeast School District here in Great San Antonio. Okay, I'm going to move over and talk about HSC testing a little bit here and give y'all an update of where that is. We had a phone call yesterday actually with GED, and here's the latest information on that. As you know, most of the websites or most of the testing centers are closed right now. There are a few of them open. I heard there's one in the Valley and I think in South Texas, and maybe in Brownsville actually, at the university. And then there's, Amarillo I heard is open, Odessa College is open, and then most of the corrections are open. And typically these the programs, the testing sites that are open are also testing sites for other emergency related testing like EMT testing and things like that. So it's open for those kind of emergency purposes, and they happen to have high school equivalency testing happening, but most of the state is closed down. And the remote testing information does not has not been released yet by GED nor by HiSET. GED, I feel like, is a little further ahead here. No fault of HiSET's, no fault of HiSET, but they just got an early jump. But here's what we've heard so far. None of this is official, but I want to give you a perspective of what I think the landscape is going to look like for high school equivalency, because that's going to be a big demand. It's going to be an invitation only type process, because there's what we're going into is a very limited throughput, meaning, if they could test, 1,000 people at one time, now it's going to be down to like, maybe 100 or less, like that's just example numbers, but there's going to be a very exponential decrease in the amount of tests they can move through because of this one-on-one and remote proctoring. So they're going to invite people to come and test, and they've prioritized the groups that they will invite to be individuals who have scored in the green area of the GED Ready, individuals that have already taken tests, and individuals that had a test scheduled and then it got canceled by the pandemic. And then we're working with them on some other prioritizations, but they're going to let those folks get a bite at the apple first, which makes sense because there's just limited volume. And none of what I just said is official yet. That's just what they're talking about. And they've said that for a couple of weeks now. So I think they're cycling around on it. It's going to only be in English initially, because they had to go with that as kind of the first a group that they could do testing in and get a lot of volume. Spanish will come though. No 16 or 17-year-olds will be allowed because they're minors, and the tests require visual identification and video footage. And there's certain video requirements that they're going to implement. So you have to kind of take a picture of yourself and of your room, and there are privacy restrictions related to children. So no 16 or 17-year-olds right now because of these consent issues. They will be invited via email. So those individuals I outlined to you that are priority will get an invitation from GED testing service. So it won't go through their portal or anything like that. They'll get an email invitation that'll say, hey, congratulations, you tested as a green on the GED Ready, or I know you had a test scheduled and we had to cancel it. we want to bring you back in. So they're going to be doing those kind of email invites. You may let your students know they need to make sure their email information is up to date with GED if that's the test they're taking. And everything I'm telling you right now is the GED guidance. We have not heard guidance from HiSET yet. It may be very similar though. But updating that email address would be critical, because if not, they're not going to get the invite information. Other information that you may want to, that will be useful. It'll be only one test at a time, so they can't go and take science and social studies or anything like that, one at a time. The transcripts will appear no different for the student. It's not going to say they were tested remotely or anything unique like that. But there will be a unique testing center ID for all the remote instruction. So since they're not at a local establishment, they're going to have just this one testing center ID as part of kind of the paperwork stuff in the background. Let's see here. The price, this is the great news. The price is going to be the same as what GED is saying right now. Since it was going to become way too onerous to renegotiate the price. Plus, they are basically not having the price of local administrations being assessed because the local test centers aren't open. So they found a way to make that happen. The other thing I really liked was the proctors are GED administrators, but they're going to be accessible from all over the country. So that means that your test proctor for GED doesn't have to be a Texas person or a person in Lubbock or Odessa or Brownsville or Waxahachie. They can be in California, or they could be in New York. So that means that the hours of testing can be longer because, if it's, Central Time here and your tester is out there in Mountain Time or in Pacific Time, you could test later into the evening. So that's a great value there because everybody's schedules are pretty choppy right now. And that's something that we'll find out more about as this guidance comes out. Anyway, that's the update I had on those kind of things. It looks like they're going to be accepting expired IDs. So part of the process is you're going to show your ID on a camera, and they're going to, or take a picture of it. And if it's expired, it's no big deal because the DHS, the DPS is closed everywhere. So that's a provision that they've made. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I see some questions coming in. Anybody have questions that they see come up that we want to flag?
Yeah, Ashley Trevino is asking a question. Lori answered it about the GED testing remotely. Yes, but remote as in the student's house or at the testing center. So her question is this for testing remotely, GED testing remotely, I mean?
Yes, this will be GED testing remotely, if I'm understanding the question correctly. So this will be, the centers haven't opened yet. So right now, this is at your house testing we're talking about. I think the process for testing in centers is going to be different, and that is less defined. What they talked to me about last week is basically setting up off-site locations where the proctor may join at a distance, and someone will just open the room. So if you're at college or something, you'll just open the room and let the students in, socially distance. They'll have computers set up, and they would remotely proctor that way. I have not heard much about that kind of guidance yet because they're not planning that completely right now. Right now, they're just trying to get the interface with what's happening for in-home testing. And the way it was described, the individual will basically get their camera. They have to take a picture of their room rather than move their laptop around. And they have specifications for what the laptop capacity and stuff has to be. I haven't seen those yet, but they did say they did a test with a group of testers, and something like 90% of the testers had the adequate capacity in terms of the video and that other feedback.
Yeah, that was a question in the chat pod. What about students? I just lost it. People are typing. Sorry. What about students' technology needs? What do they need in terms of technology?
Yeah, that guidance hasn't been published yet, but what they're testing right now, they're kind of piloting, and whatever the users have been, the students have been, it's been adequate. It's not going to be available on phones though, although you may use your phone to send your proctor pictures of your environment and of your ID. So those are kind of some of the areas that are still being roughed out right now.
Okay, there's a couple of other questions that
Okay.
we've got. Denise Johnson, test takers will only pay the GED testing taking cost, correct? Test takers will only pay the GED testing taking cost, correct?
Yes. If I'm under, yeah, I mean, the cost will be relatively the same, if not identical to what it is now, published on the websites. There's been no discussion about raising the cost. GED, that is a cost that's established with the State Board of Education and then negotiated somewhat locally too with the testing center fees. And none of that appears to be changing at all. So, Fabiana, if you recall any more than that, or Tracy that was on the phone call yesterday, I don't recall anything other than that being said.
And then Alejandra says, do you know if they are open to train local sites proctors?
That has been talked about because they are anticipating that they're going to need a lot of trainers and proctors, because they're reducing their volume of availability dramatically. So that's something I'll keep an ear open for. I offered up. I said, we could put our hands on probably several hundred folks that would be willing to do that. So that's something that if you have people you think would be well situated for that, just keep it in mind. I will definitely make a call for that if I see that opportunity has come about.
Are you doing jumping jacks over there, Anthony?
No, I'm moving inside because the sun's coming out and it's getting in my eyes.
There's
Okay,
another
other questions?
question. There's lots of questions. Let's see. You may have just answered my question. If space can be made available at the college with more reliable internet, could testing be done not at homes?
Yes, I think the discussion we've had was, if the official testing centers are closed, or if remote sites need to be opened up because they need to be able to get better connectivity, be closer to populations. They're worried that there might be areas of the state where there's not going to be testing. And they would entertain new remote sites.
And then Sharon Moss, there's a fee that the site charges. Will that be inclusive of the online tests also?
The way I understand it is the site charges are going to be waived because the sites aren't being used. And so either that, and this is where I'm less sure, but if it's either the site's fee will stay and they'll be offsetting that cost by doing this remote testing, or they'll be waived test site costs. I can't remember what I heard, and I did not hear either one of them definitively. But the cost to the student, I know, is not going to go up. It may go down, but it's not going to go up.
Okay.
Also heard yesterday the cost of the GED Ready is supposedly going down also because they're going to be doing so much more of that, they anticipate.
And Fabiano's posting, the GED will inform us of any NView requirements as they roll out the remote testing pilot in other states over the next couple of weeks. I think you covered most of what we know as of now.
Okay.
Kim Vinton is happy that you've gone into the house. She said you possibly will get a sunburn. Can we take a picture of the student's ID?
I don't understand what that means. The student will have to present their ID and show it either on their camera, on their computer, or take a picture of it and send it to the proctor to identify that that is actually the individual taking a test.
Okay. And Tracy just confirmed what you had said. They'll not raise costs for the actual test, which is great news.
Yeah.
Eva Cantwell is asking, it's not really a question about GED, but does anyone have any information on TSI? Is this available remotely? Will colleges be waived during this time?
The latest I had, and this was very early information, the TSI is available already. Someone might confirm that at a college in the chat. They came out very early. The College Board did with a remote proctoring service that they're using. So as far as I understand, the TSI is a go, and it's not going to be waived.
And then Christina Robinson is asking, they're not going on site at all until the fall. How do they get on the testing pilot?
We requested Texas to be part of a testing pilot. They had some other states selected already, but yesterday he said they may open that up if they need it. So that's the latest on the piloting. We waved our hand up to say we'd be willing to do it.
Fabiana just talked a little bit more about the NView, about requiring the photo identification and how they will do it, and that y'all will be providing guidance as more details come up. Leslie Hayes is sharing that North Carolina is testing TSI with a remote, or no, can't be North Carolina. NC is testing TSI with a remote proctor.
Navarro College, yeah.
Navarro College, yep. Irene Ramos, I was to understand that it was up to the higher education institution whether they were going to require the TSIA.
Oh, that could be the case. I don't know. I should know that, but I don't know that. We'll see if we can find out what that requirement is. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the TSIA is an institutional requirement. It's not a Texas requirement necessarily. I think the institutions can require or can kind of build some local policy around that. We'll
Okay.
For you guys. And if somebody's at a college and knows a little bit about that, please chime in.
That's it for now.
Go ahead and move on a little bit here, and we can keep the questions going. But I want to get back to our down to the remote testing letter and give you some guidance on that. So let me pull it up, and there's a link here that I just made this morning, but I feel like I really want to be very collaborative and engaged on our guidance coming out, because y'all are moving fast, we're moving fast, and I'm not going to pretend to know everything. So I sent this letter out last week. I sent a new one out a few minutes ago before this call. If you're busy, but if you can go through and really help us with questions, send them through that survey, and give us some feedback, because it's going through an editing process now. We still have time to make changes to it. Then it'll get released officially. and then we'll probably be working on the next version of it, because I think it's going to evolve a few times before we get settled with it, just because the guidance is changing so quickly. But let me pull it up here so we can talk about it and take a look at it. And I am going to find this letter. Here we go. All right. That look good?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, this just went out a few minutes ago for you guys. It is a draft for distribution, meaning this is not the official letter, and things are likely to change in this letter. But we're planting a flag on this one right now. We're going to run with it for now. Just background at the very beginning, you know, we're getting most of our information from the Department of Education, and kind of building off of that in terms of best practices that we're seeing from you guys in the field, from hearing what the test publishers are saying, etc. I wanted to get in and just kind of go through some things. We've got some definitions. You know, this new environment is requiring us to come up with some new definitions. Many of these you're familiar with. Excuse me. New students served at a distance. And so when you see the reference to a new student, that's going to be an individual that does not have a NRS test yet in Teams. They're being collected on the passes tracker and don't have a test yet. And then we've got some other definitions for non-NRS approved tests and NRS approved tests, on-site testing, etc. I think you've seen most of these in previous letters. In the performance section, and I'm just going to run through this because we don't have time to read the whole letter, but we talk more about performance accountability with what we know right now, which is not a whole lot. And I know that's the question of the day for everybody, but I led off with this service first mantra. Serving students over priorities related to performance is what you need to be thinking. And I've said that for the last few weeks. Don't worry about like if you're going to get dinged because you didn't do something exactly right. I'm also feeling like even when the remote testing comes online, we're going to have to, as an agency, still maintain some leniency, because I think it's going to be a very constrained environment for performance. The ability to test quickly, test it all for all students, I don't think we're going to realize anytime soon, because it's just a much more difficult process to manage. So I'm working right now with Adam Leonard and DOI. Mahalia this morning even we're hard at work on looking at what we need to be doing in Teams differently, perhaps for this period, so that we don't have any adverse impacts that would be created by Teams because of the lack of tests or old tests. So that's being looked at right now, and I appreciate her efforts on that. It was a good call this morning. But we have this item here saying grantees will not fail performance solely as a result of the pandemic or efforts to slow its spread. TWC staff is aware that grantee performance will be negatively impacted due to enrollment testing and other performance accountability constraints and inconsistencies. So we want to go officially on record. We've told you that, but we want to go on record to say, you know, here's the documentation. If your leadership is worried about it, if it's keeping you up at night, your performance accountability specialist, that's, you know, a maven for compliance, you know, you can tell them to kind of relax. They're going to be fine. And I appreciate y'all. Y'all have been asking a lot of questions about it. That means you care about that, and I appreciate it. The next section, we talk about the need, once testing comes online, to really make reasonable attempts to begin testing. Given these constraints, we do want to have you start testing as the tests become available and as we can prioritize individuals that need to be tested. So I don't want anyone to feel like it's an option once these tests go online. Everyone's going to need to do remote testing, so be prepared for that. But I want to add this overlay of reasonableness also, because we realize the constraints and those types of things. And there could be other constraints besides lack of technology, lack of students. You know, I think a lot of students are going to be uncomfortable taking tests online, or be comfortable enough with using computers to take tests. I always go back to when I took the GRE back in 1985 or 6 or 7. I don't know when I took that thing. No, later than that. It was 1990 maybe. And I took it on a computer, and I didn't even know how to use a computer back then, honestly. So it was harrowing for me, I remember. I did poorly on it because I didn't know how to use a computer, and the math was hard. But that's what our students are going to be faced with. And, you know, everybody knows, even though it's a TABE test or something, that's a high stakes environment to them. The high school equivalency is going to even be more high stakes, because that is high stakes to some extent. So we need to mitigate those. Y'all are wonderful about working with your students on that. You can alleviate their fears, your leadership's fears about performance, but I'm trying to strike a balance here. If I don't have it right, let me know, because we really want to make sure that customers and students feel comfortable, you guys feel that you're doing the right thing, and that you're being appropriately challenged to implement remote testing, but that it's not unreasonable, and because we are in a national and worldwide emergency, and we've got to be reasonable, and that your leadership is informed, because, you know, right now, you know, our bosses are like wanting really quick information, and I can imagine what meetings are like at your institution sometimes. And you need to feel confident to say, like, we feel really comfortable where we are. TWC's given us this guidance. They told us not to worry about performance right now, but to get the students served. We're following all their instructions, etc. So I want to make sure you can have that discussion with your president, with your superintendent, your executive director, whoever it happens to be. And then we'll do our due diligence to stay even-handed on that and clear with you. But right now, that's where our agency is. Part of what we're doing is we've got this letter that will be kind of our official guidance. And then many of y'all have accessed this remote testing chart there on line 4 on your screen. That's the chart that's on the TCAL pandemic response website. And that's where we're going to try to summarize and update the publisher's status. And that way you quickly go see latest things are on what's going on with the status of test deployment on remote testing at a glance. We'll always advise you to check the test publisher's website. Although I did look at, I think it was the best website, and it didn't look updated to me the other day. So sometimes the test publishers may be further behind on their websites than we're trying to get information out. So don't go there exclusively. We'll try to keep up to date with it and let you know as things evolve. We have a copy of the assessment guide that will be coming out for next year, starting July 1st. You're going to see a copy of it soon in the next week or two, but that is not going to have any information related to remote testing yet. It's going to be basically our guidelines, and what we are going to do is in the next month or so, start to we're going to add an addendum to the assessment guide, because the federal government, OCTAE, has asked us to update our assessment guides with this guidance so that it's official, and we're happy to do that. But what you'll basically see is the guidance in this letter we're going to put as an appendix to the assessment guide with references within the assessment guide. So when you go in and see something that looks like it's written for a brick and mortar test administration, it'll have a reference to the appendix to the applicable section for remote testing. So
Hanson,
that's kind of, yes.
excuse me for interrupting. There are some conversations going on, but there are some right now on the assessment, talking about assessment. I wanted to go ahead and bring up, if that's okay. Michelle Lamont in Amarillo, increased concerns cost per testing assessments that have a one-on-one or low test ratios will come with increased financial restraints.
Yeah.
Risa Wingfield, oh, excuse me.
Well, let me answer that one. Yeah, and I appreciate you stopping me. So that was Michelle Lamont from Amarillo College. These things will all cost more because of the one-on-one administration. And that is the next discussion that we want to have. We're making money available to you right now through the release of the Q3 funding and the workforce integration grants that we'll get an update on in a minute. But that is something that we want to listen well to you, and you need to start helping us forecast funding needs. If you feel like this is going to be exorbitantly more expensive, we're going to need to put a number on what you think it's going to be, because we will go back and engage our commission on additional funding if that looks necessary before July 1st. But yes, Michelle, I think these costs will go up.
And then Risa with Literacy Council of Tyler, one of the requirements for remote testing with CASAS, and I assume TABE, is the use of the online test. There will be an additional delay if a program has been using paper-based testing only.
Correct. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, Risa, from Literacy Council of Tyler in Tyler, Texas. Very important that when we say remote testing, we mean the online versions of these tests also. And I think there's mixed usage of those out there for sure. So that might be an additional ramp up and additional training that you're going to need to do with your local staff. Probably other purchasing costs that could be related to that. Great point.
And then Anne is thanking Josh for the TSIA update.
Good, yes. Thank you, Josh. I didn't read it yet, but I'm sure it's thorough.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Yes.
And then just some responses. I think you're good
to
go.
No, it's good. Very good. I appreciate those feedbacks. I've let you know about the assessment guide. That's evolving, but that will be the kind of, to the Department of Education, that's the official guidance for the state. So we do have to migrate what is said in this remote testing letter into the assessment guide, which is no problem, but that's the process for that. This was the lines 13 and 14 that Mahali and Fabian and I were scrambling over at the last minute this morning. But we are going to ask you, and this will actually be a no local flexibility. It says local flexibility right now, but we're going to have you prioritize students that have expired tests or new students with no tests in teams. So, if you've got, 100 students that need testing, we want to help you determine which of those need to get tested first, knowing that your throughput cycle is much slower because it's one-on-one. So we're still working on that language. We'll be a little bit more specific in the final letter, I think, but that's where we're going on it. There's no need to change test brands, as I mentioned earlier. Remember, there are other MSGs that are available. So for example, for basic education. So for example, if you're going to test, if you can't test or it's a constraint, but a student can enter workforce training or a community college or something without a test, or a training program without a test, that entered into post-secondary could be a credit. So that's just, I think we all know that. The guidance letter is 0118, change one. But you've got some other MSG options out there if testing is not one of them. And then here we go through the pre-screening test orientation info. I won't go into all of that. You've seen some of this before, but these are generalized guidance from the Department of Ed and from us in terms of being compliant and test security and things like that. So that may evolve as we learn more about what DRC and CASAS want to do, as well as HISED and GED, what they settle on. I put some information on alternate test locations. This is some forecasting that if your testing center or your institution is closed all summer, which many of you are, and this is really the next item on our agenda, but I'm kind of charging everyone to get creative and start looking at alternative places that you can give tests, because I don't think anybody wants to go through the summer with no tests open, no test centers open or facilities open if you can open them. You know, if we have governor's guidance that says we may be opening swimming pools and we may be getting less restrictive in our institutional openings, if your school still is closed over the summer, you might want to find some offsite locations, because as we look to the fall, if you can do group TABE testing with social distancing or whatever restraints we need at the time for safety, you'll want to do that. That'll be quicker. You can get more volume, but you can't do it if your public school or college is closed. You have to have an alternate location. So I would start working my networks, finding my community-based organizations, the workforce board, the churches and faith-based, YMCA, you name it, anybody that's got space that may be open this summer, and set up at least intake locations to kind of help you out there to do testing and to do intake. And then we have information on standard operating procedures and reporting. So take a look at the letter. Please send us feedback in that survey. Take some time. It's fast moving, but you have, definitely the weekend coming up if you take a break and want to have some time to read this, because whatever we come out with is going to be what we're going to stick with, and it's only as good as you can help us make it. So now's your time to kind of give us your feedback. And I'll say that too, no question is dumb. We're all learning a lot of this, and sometimes what appears to be the silliest question is actually a good insight. I found that out to be the case often lately. So with that, any other new
Yes.
coming in?
Yes, another comment, Susan Gussler. If we roll over a score for a student who progress tested in October 15, 2019, will teams still prohibit us from putting them in a new class after 10, 15, 20? This has a big impact on how many we need to retest this fall. Currently, teams won't let us add a new class for continuously enrolled students once their score is over 365
Yes.
days.
Yeah, that was our discussion this morning with our IT people. So, and Mahalia answered that it will still be the max of 365 days. So that's why we say in this letter, you need to test students whose test may be expiring, and that's part of the prioritization, because it will expire in 365 days. That is the current coding. And we were about to change that coding to the 150-day max. And I think we're backing off that because we would have a mass amount of tests that would be expiring if we did that. So it's still the 365, and that's the number to look for right now. Thank you, Mahalia, for cluing us in on that. And thank you for the question, Susan Gussler from Austin Community College. Okay, I'm going to go back to our agenda here. Keep this ball rolling. There we go. All right. Here we go. All right. I talked about offsite locations here. And I just want to underscore that, because you might think, well, it's April, we're going into May, fall's a long way away. The fall is right on us, and many of y'all know that. And there's a lot going on, but you might put together a team that has the good social community relations to see if you could find some locations to do remote services if you're not able to, if we're open. You know, we have to be open for business. But I anticipate the way the governor has given direction and the way some communities are moving, that could be more of a normal for us during the summer. And then we may go back to the status that we're in now. Next item, integrated education and training. These were actually numbered items. I'm sorry I didn't get that fixed on our agenda. That one, I just wanted to say that we have a survey coming out. Ann's been working on it. And then we have a call tomorrow that I believe everybody on this call has been invited to. And we're going to start a touch base on the topic of integrated education and training. It's not a training. It's not a PD. It's a discussion like this is, where you submit questions. But we are very interested, and our commissioners are very interested in what is the status of training across the state, and how much is going on, in what areas is it going on, etc. We are working. I'm part of a work group that's looking at what the new economy will look like in terms of labor market. That means, you know, the demand occupations that we used in February are largely irrelevant because so much has changed in terms of occupations. When you have 2 million people unemployed and filing claims, you've really changed your labor market dramatically. So we're looking at where it's going by looking at job postings, and that will define new kind of demand occupations. But right now, to me, the most important thing is what training is possible, because so much of our training requires hands-on components, and so much of our performance testing and our industry recognized credentialing requires performance, on-site performance. So we're going to ask in our survey, and you may be hearing this from other parts of your institutions, colleges in particular, about what is going on and what is possible. So we can define a map of saying, here's where growing jobs are, and here's where the training is available and where it's not, and here's where the certifications are available and where they are not. So, you know, I know there seems to be a big demand for truck drivers, but testing for truck drivers, CDL, are not available right now. You know, driving a truck may not be available right now because of social distancing. Those are big constraints. The flip side is the oil and gas industry has fallen to the floor. So there's a lot of truck drivers that are unemployed that could fill those gaps. So those are the lenses we're looking through in terms of looking at where we're going and where IET may be going for the next year. So we're going to engage tomorrow on the phone call. Not a big set agenda for that, but bring your questions and bring the right people. If you've got training people that are closer to the action than you are, please send them the link to the call.
We do have some comments and questions in the chat pod.
Good.
Sharon Moss is asking, when workforce centers open back up, can we use AEL funding to pay them to test our tape customers? And Lori answered yes.
Yes.
Octaviano, to clarify, we will have to post-test before the 365-day point, or it will not be considered a post-test, correct?
Did Mahalia respond to that? I can't remember.
Not that I see.
I was just, can you guys hear me? I was just
Yep.
typing a response, but I'll just answer verbally.
Okay.
So there's no changes to how the performance works, Octaviano. So if you're wanting to get a post-test in for the purposes of performance, it still has to be before June 30th, regardless of, you know, days or times or anything else. The 365 days is really to be able to utilize a test to act as a baseline, and, you know, move that test forward into the next program year. But in terms of post-testing, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Maybe I'm not understanding what it is, but And in terms of performance, nothing's changed. I mean, you would still have to have a post-test before June 30th, regardless of when the pre-test is, or when that first NRS approved test is that you take to establish a baseline.
Thank you, Mahalia.
And then Kathy at Austin Community College. Then a student without an eligible NRS test will not be tracked in teams. We will need to use the passes tracker.
So the goal starting for program year 2021 is that all students, regardless of an NRS approved test, will be in teams. That's something that we're trying to work out right now, is the ability to track those students in teams with the same functionality that we track all the NRS tested students. We're basically just going to try to create something so they exist in their own cohort within teams, so that you guys can easily be able to track who has an NRS approved test and who doesn't.
And then Doug Mudd from Community Action mentions that the Housing Authority offices usually have some space available and may have some flexibility in opening sooner than school districts and community colleges for testing in the summer.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. Yes, that's very much the case. And Doug's got to find when they're on the I-35. I drive by it all the time. But yeah, housing authorities are going to be one of those areas. Many of y'all have them in your area. They have big community areas, and they have kind of a mandate to kind of provide services for their residents and the community. So that's not a bad recommendation there. Thank you so much, Doug.
And then there were some questions that were answered by other folks.
Okay.
Sandra Cortez, Laredo just had 19 students pass an NBA bookkeeping certification
All right.
taught remotely.
Excellent. That's the kind of stuff we want to learn about, is what can be happening out there. Thank you, Sandra from Laredo. We'll talk about that tomorrow, and we'll be capturing that in our survey once it gets out.
And I'm sorry.
I see Christina's question.
Yeah, and I have one that came through privately.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on reducing restrictions on the 2-week period of the initial test in the first contact hour? For example, as we look to recruit students, there are students that were initially tested but didn't come to class. If we could reach these students to return and are able to enter their test scores, that would save us time on remote testing.
I'll let Mahalia answer that in terms of functionality.
I'm sorry, Deb, can you repeat that? That was kind of long.
Sure, let me just put it in the chat pod.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
While she does that, I'll answer Christina's question. As far as I can tell, she asks, as far as remote testing, will it continue through the fall? If we have the capacity, can we still do it? This hasn't been said officially, but I think the remote testing is here to stay. And I think it's definitely here to stay for the next year or year and a half, because I think the pandemic is here to stay. I don't think that's going to go away in the summer for good. And I don't think any scientist does either. So I would go ahead and start building that to be an option for the duration here. And I think the publishers and the field will see other values in terms of reaching remote rural individuals and after hours and things like that, that will make this to be something we want to standardize once the pandemic is over and we're all clear. It's just going to bring a lot of value to getting access to people.
And then Anson, we're at time 11:27 is from Keegan. If you want to scroll back up to see where we are on the questions.
Yes.
Keegan reads, so as we roll over students using the 365-day rule, their first test next program year would become their new baseline. Is that correct? Just trying to wrap my brain around it.
I'll let Mahalia respond. Mahalia, if you can respond to some of those in the chat. I'm not seeing that one. I want to get to the one that you got privately. Oh, it's this one here. So Mahalia, do you see it? Is there any discussion on reducing restrictions on the 2-week period of the initial test in the first contact hour? For example, As we look to recruit new students, there are students that were initially tested but didn't come to class. If we could reach these students to return and are able to enter their test scores, that would save us time on remote testing.
So I think I understand what the question is, and let me tell you guys what we're doing. So the way the new teams will work starting PY 2021 is that when you register a student for a class, it is going to basically look back now 365 days across all the tests that the student has in the system, and any content area, and it's going to say, so for instance, it's going to look at, if the student is TABE tested, it's going to look at math, it's going to look at reading, it's going to look at language, and it's basically going to pull forward any test in any content area that is less than 365 days old. Some of the rules and things that are in Teams right now have to do with establishing a domain of significance. Those are all going to go away because we don't have domain of significance anymore. So any usable test within 365 days of that class registration date or your first contact hour date is going to be used for the purposes of establishing baselines in each content area. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the way it's gonna work starting next program year.
Yeah, and some of these questions, these are great questions. We'll get this chat and we'll make edits to the letter if need be, for sure, because these are the nuances that I want to learn. That 2-week limitation, I know, is one of them. So let's move on here. Real quick, I wanted to mention that this is only applicable to certain people out there that are implementing programs with Tyson Foods and Upward Academy. There's about 10 of y'all out there. I figured I'd go ahead and bring it up here, but we got an inquiry from a Texas senator about, Tyson and other meat food processing firms have been in the news lately for plant closures and food scarcity concerns. A Texas senator reached out to us and asked us what we were doing for Tyson. They mainly wanted to know about were we helping fill jobs in terms of placements as an agency. So we have a team that's working on that. I want to bring it up to those of you that are working on Upward Academy that if you hear something from the plant, because sometimes, AEL is probably the closest aligned of all the workforce programs to Tyson. So if your contact calls you and says, oh, we got this question from somebody at TWC about job placement, do you know anything about it? You can ask me about it, but I don't think you'll be engaged on this. It's really about placing jobs and possibly training new people for job vacancies at the plants. But I wanted to bring it up in case you did hear something. Just loop me in, text me or send me an email, and I can provide you some updates on that. I'm kind of not directly involved because it's really about job placement. Our workforce boards are going to be working it, but just in case that comes up, that's out there. A little reminder here, this goes back on the testing, but when you do remote testing, I just want to underscore that it's required that you take the TCAL trainings before implementing these tests. So we want to hold the line on that. I think I said that earlier, but although I love Mavericks, we don't need Mavericks all the time on some of these compliance areas. Here's the information on the table 1112 remote testing administration. We have one tomorrow, 2 to 3:30, and then one May 5th, 2:30 to 2 to 3:30. Deb or anybody, did you want to say anything particular about those administrations?
Hi, Anson. It's Tracy.
Hey, Tracy.
Yes, the webinar tomorrow is, we have one seat left. On Tuesday, there are 184 seats left. We will be recording these webinars. Mike Johnson's gracious enough to come and do a Texas webinar for us so that y'all have time to ask specific questions to him. The national webinars have been quite full, and we do provide the certificate, which is what you're needing to show that you've attended, and the recorded version will also provide the certificate as well. So this is filling up very, very quickly. Did you want me to talk about the other things on here, Anson?
I think they're self-explanatory. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Sure.
This is the new stuff, guys. So this is where you want to be focusing some review on the training. And Mike, I think Tracy and others have really helped get Mike's attention to do a Texas-specific webinar. So I really appreciate that from you guys and from Mike to reach out. We are a big customer for TABE, and that's been really nice to get that touch there. A little notice on upcoming webinars. We have one tomorrow that I'm going to be doing with Ashley Winkle at a Literacy Council of Tyler on remote education, remote learning. And I know many of y'all were on the COABE webinar that I did with Melanie Garcia and Glenda Rose, Melanie from Socorro ISD in El Paso, and Glenda from Community Action around Austin. Great webinar that COABE one was. We had about 1,000 people on it. I'm going to try not to duplicate as much of that webinar and do some different stuff. I haven't come up with it yet, so I got to work on my PowerPoint before tomorrow. But tune into that if you're interested in seeing that. And then Ashley's going to talk about an app called Wakelet. So she's kind of the one of our local experts on that in Texas here, and we're happy to join Ashley in that webinar. We've got some survey information up there. I think we've updated that survey number 4, and we're fine there. But the remote testing one, I sent out with the letter so that you can start to give us some feedback on that. The IET one's forthcoming. And then I'm gonna skip on down. Well, one thing I would say here, we have the FAQ getting updated right now. Elena is working on that, and hopefully we'll get that out today. I got some feedback there from somebody. There's nothing new in there, I don't think. I sent out kind of the new questions like on disposable phones and things like that the other day via email. We'll clearly flag what's new in that though. But the FAQ is going to have some good information in there.
Anson,
Yes.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting.
No.
There's another question in the chat pod before you go any further.
Yeah.
From Linda Fajoko, is the 12-hour requirement still applicable for the new student intake procedure?
It is required for them to become a participant, if that's what your question is. Yes, that requirement of 12 hours of contact before a student becomes a participant is still active. And that was actually a response from the Department of Education. Denise, you're right. Denise Oran from San Jacinto was responding about a 2-week question. And I think that's where the original question was going, had to do with the newer requirements we have in the assessment guide related to 2 weeks of time to complete testing once the student begins instruction. So that's what we were talking about earlier. So thank you, Denise. Let's see here.
Michelle had a question for Mahalia.
Mahalia, you see the question from Michelle Lamons on, I'm looking for it here on.
It's rollover at 11:38. Several folks keep using the word rollover. From my understanding, rollover is prohibited, correct? However, participants' profiles can connect to a new PY and the system will pull any test that meets the 365-day rules. Is my
Yeah,
understanding
sorry, I think
correct?
I responded to her I think I responded to her privately,
Oh,
actually.
okay. Sorry.
So on the last call, what I had told you guys is that we are going to disable the rollover feature in Teams. But that is really, it's more of a class level feature. So students will roll over, their hours will carry forward. Any of their tests that they have within the last 365 days prior to whatever that first class registration date is for the new, all that stuff at the student level will come forward with the student when you register them for class and you put them in a new profile next program year. It's just we're going to disable the feature at the class level for those classes to automatically roll over. And that's just because we're having to create this space to develop classes for these non-NRS tested individuals, and there's just going to be some complications there, and we always have issues with the rollover feature anyway, so that's the part that I'm talking about when I say we're not going to have the rollover. So just a clarification on that.
Thank you. I think it's Christy Hicks from Trinity Valley College asked about the 12 direct hours. That's correct, Christy. I'm going to move on here, and I want to let everybody know we're going to we've always played fast and loose with the end time for the biweekly calls and the weekly calls now. They typically go over an hour, so we've scheduled them now for an hour and a half because there's just so much content. So if you want to block your calendars accordingly, I don't think we're going to be having short calls anytime soon because there's just so much to go through. Did you want to talk about the exclusionary reason webinar, Mahalia? That just got put out there.
Sure. Just briefly, so in your actual agenda, and the link is here on your screen, I did an exclusionary reason webinar, and this is really just to help you guys. This is a feature we put in Teams back at the very beginning of the year, and we had really great intentions, I think, of getting a policy letter out explicitly on this, and we never did, and I've just kind of been holding this thing hostage. So I'm going to release it. So it's out there, and I redid it to try to get it more up to date with any new guidance that we have. But I want you guys to be utilizing this as an option to exclude people from exit-based measures when it's applicable. In particular, those of you who are doing corrections education, please take the time. It's about a 20-minute webinar. It's going to very heavily impact you. That it's out there, and your program specialist, also have this, and they've been reviewing it this morning. There's a PowerPoint that is attached in the webinar that you can download and use for local training on this. But just there it is. Go and review it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mahalia, for working. She was cranking that thing yesterday. I know. I want to say something. All of my staff have just been exceptional lately. You guys know they're great. But man, we have been pulling out all the stops lately, and not a one of them has just backed off the gas at any level. So I really thank them. It's been really challenging, and I think your all's local staff are doing the same thing. So we got a great field here we're part of, and great people make it. So I'm going to move over to board and adult education literacy grants team, Sarah, Renee, and Ashley, and we're going to go through and talk about some contract actions and funding updates. So I'll give the ball over to you guys.
Hey, Anson, good morning.
Hi.
This is Ashley Crush with the Bail team. I do have a few important business updates for y'all. Firstly, on our agenda here is many of you, there's about 21 providers who are currently in the process of having an amendment go through. Many of those are with our legal department, but some have moved on to grantee signature, so your signatories should be receiving an email about that. If you did not earn PBF in year 1, quarter 4, or in year 2, quarter 2, those funds are being swept back to TWC so that we can include them in the year 3 allocations. This was money that you were previously not having access to, so it shouldn't change much for you, other than some providers are noticing when we initiate these amendments, our financial encumbrance unit goes immediately into your CEDAR account and changes your total grant award amount. So we have gotten a couple of emails that said, hey, I've noticed that my total grant award amount in CEDAR does not match what I have here on my budget. That's going to be why. So if you notice that that discrepancy before you actually see the amendment come through, it's a little counterintuitive that finance actually removes those funds before the amendment goes through, but that's how that happens if you see that discrepancy. Moving on to our second item in the agenda for the Workforce Integration Initiative grants. These are going to be your provider follow-up activities and COVID response money that is being released. We are still on track for May 15th release. These grants are currently with our legal department, and your signatories should be seeing those come through by May 15th. Finally, in this unusual season of time, many of you are needing budget adjustments. Currently, year two is going to behave just like year one did. These funds will be available to you in year three. So don't fret about IET and professional development and needing to move it anywhere else. We aren't able to do that, but the funds will be available to you in year three. So we can leave them where they are for now. But in that vein, if you do find yourself needing to do a budget adjustment, on March 11th, which I know seems like a lifetime ago, you received an email directly from Kara McVeigh with the new budget adjustment process for our core providers. So in order to expedite those requests for you, please locate that email. Be sure that you are following the written process that is there. And if you have any questions or you cannot find that email, feel free to reach out to one of your grant managers for that information. We'll be happy to help. Anton, that's all I have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. You guys are doing a great job over there, keeping the trains running on the finances for us.
I wanted to respond to a question
Yes.
from Elcott. You can move workforce training dollars within categories. So your training dollars within AEL can move somewhere else in AEL. You cannot move professional development funds, and you cannot move IET EL civics into a flow of federal funds. So those have to stay in their categories, but your workforce training dollars can move within their own categories.
All right. Before I move on to Lori to talk about the ad hoc deliverables here, I saw a question here from Tara out in Wharton, and it was about, this has come up a few times. She's asking in the FAQ that if there's going to be guidance on tracking outside class activities that are not like done remotely, meaning they're not tracked in real time via, the methods that we've approved. I'm assuming, Tara, you mean like doing packets or homework and things like that. To answer the question, no, there isn't a question on that right now, although the question has come up a few times, more specifically in corrections where there's no internet and there's no teachers being able to have access to the facilities. So we have a few schools that are just dropping off homework for folks to do. I'll talk to Mahalia about what we want to do about that, because I have a feeling it is going on out there and it meets a need. How we track the hours on that becomes much more difficult because it's not approved DL curriculum, as you mentioned. So I appreciate that. Maria, if you can grab Tara's question there at 11:44 on the chat, we'll put it in our FAQ tracker. We have a big spreadsheet that we track all these little questions on, so we make sure we can answer them. Thank you, Tara. Was there any other questions that have come up since that break there with the bail?
There was just a note from, or a question from Kelsey Woodard at Region 20. On the quick links navigations, can you add the updated date next to remote AEL guidance like you do for the FAQs?
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was there. Yeah.
Oh, that's providers TCall site. Can you add the
Yeah.
update?
We'll look at that. We'll look at how we arrange that. That's a good catch. I know we have the serving students at a distance quick link and we have the remote testing. But we may need to think about doing some rearranging there. Good feedback, Kelsey. We'll take a look at it. And Lori, why don't you and I work on that, and then we can talk to Jorge and Deb about it. Let's see here. So I'll move on here. Lori, do you want to go through the upcoming ad hoc deliverables and where those are listed now for folks?
Sure, good morning. Okay, we're just looking at the distance learning plan, which is due May 31st, to the AEL distance learning mailbox listed there. And the PD follow-up plan is due June 30th. You should have been contacted by now by your TCall PD specialist to coordinate that with your PD coordinator. And that is due just to the regular AEL contracts mailbox as you do most of your deliverables and copy your program specialist. But TCall will be submitting that, will be working with you on that, and they'll take care of the final submission. So you'll be working on that together.
Okay, great. I'm going to go show, thank you, Lori. I'm going to go and flip over the screen here because this might be new to people. So this is our beautiful pandemic update website that TCall has built. If y'all go to their homepage, you'll see we've kind of redesigned it here. But I wanted to point out your deliverables now. If you go down, we've got two sets of quick links. These top ones here, and then this group here. And we put a deliverables chart. You click on that and you've got all the revisions and due dates and information. And I want to thank Mahalia and Lori and Bale and everybody that's helped kind of help me keep up with this, because I kind of lost track of what we were extending and when things were due. So now you got it. I'll walk through one more time. So you go in and say, oh, I need to find out when my deliverables will due. You click on this AEL for providers, and it's the second quick links box right there. Click on that, and you've got all the deliverables. So try to make that easier for you guys to have an at-a-glance place to go for you. So appreciate the quick work on that, getting that up there. TCall and Lori for helping me out. I think we're getting wrapped up here. We've got some other deliverables outlined here. The distance learning plan, May 31st. Follow-up PD plan, June 30th. So that's far out. I'm going to skip down and look at any PD. And is there anything in here, Deb or others, that y'all want to flag for the group here before we start signing off?
Hi, Anson. This is Beth Ponder. I think the big one is obviously the remote testing for TABE. That session tomorrow is full, but we do have room for more participants on May 5th. And then we've added this Google Classroom. So if you have teachers that are still working on how am I doing this remote instruction thing, we've got 2 sessions for Google Classroom. The first one on May 4th is full. There are seats available in the one for May 6th, and we will be going ahead and running a 3rd session of that. And then the other thing I would just highlight is the Technology and Distance Learning Virtual Conference was supposed to be taking place face-to-face tomorrow in San Antonio, and several of our presenters have offered to do that online. So on May 14th and 15th, we'll have 6 sessions for our Distance Learning and Technology Conference. So I'll leave it at that. They can read the rest of them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. You know, wonderful feedback. The Tech and DL conference, I'll miss it this year. I always love that conference, but I'm glad that we're going to do it remotely. So that's going to be exciting. Thanks for the addition of the Google Classroom. That's been a hot one. I wanted to give y'all a little shout out for TCAL and for us in the field. I got asked nationally about like, what do we do for professional development in Texas? It was kind of like this offhanded question for all the states. And when I told them and showed them all of the things we have across the gamut, you know, career pathway expansion, DL, all these things, it was a national jaw drop, I can tell you. We have such a deep professional development system. Thank you guys. And this reminded me of that moment. I saw a question from Denise Orand in here.
Yes.
And this could really expand into a discussion that we might have to have in another time, but it's good feedback. I think Denise is asking the audience really, tutoring is not anything we've really done in adult education before the way we need to now. Some need help that is individualized to navigate in Zoom or other things. How is this handled if anyone else is doing it? Drop in, part of ongoing classes, can it be entered in teams? Anyway, lots of questions about tutoring for those needing more support. That's a great question. Let's put that, Maria, in our tracker. And if people have feedback on that, we'll try to see what we might have already covered in our FAQ or might not have. And Denise, if you can be more explicit about what you're not finding in our questions and guidance, that'll help us sharpen a response back. I see where you're coming from, though. I'm kind of so close into all this stuff. I'm not sure seeing what we're missing, but there's obviously surely stuff out there. Any other questions that I missed here?
Melissa Jones had a question. Will the TABE 1112 remote test administration be available? Oh, yes, later in the PD portal for someone who can't attend.
And the answer is yes, correct.
Tracy, yeah, these are going to be recorded and put in the portal.
Maybe,
Beth?
Tracy, Beth.
Yeah, this is Lori. Yes, they are being recorded and they'll be available in the PD portal once post-production is complete.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
And Deb, this is Laura. We've got those flagged as high priority too. So we should have them turned around within about a week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Carol, go ahead. We'll do yours.
Jeannie Hale, we added scavenger hunts now at the beginning of classes and hold WebEx for students.
Okay, she's responding to Denise, I think.
Okay.
Carol Van Diver said, did we hear there's training for corrections? There is not. I was talking about doing, we're getting questions about doing homework as part of the class activities in corrections because of the lack of internet access inside the walls. And we haven't released that guidance yet, but there's no training that we've done specifically on corrections. I think we need some more guidance for those of you doing corrections. We haven't provided enough. So I think that's something I'll work with Veronica and Mahali on to see if we can, rest of the folks, get some feedback on what is needed out there in the corrections realm. If you have questions, Carol, or anybody else, Mick Norrington out there at Lee College also had some feedback earlier. Let us know areas that we're not providing feedback on so we can build that out. Oscar Garcia from Southwest Texas Junior College down there in Uvalde Rio area. Any thoughts of once remote testing implements, releasing a demo video displaying a remote test session in action? I think that would be helpful to the field. I love that idea. Let's put that on our to-do list. So I think what Oscar's thinking is maybe do what we would consider and what the publishers would consider a compliant test session. And they may be providing this information. So Oscar, look for that because I'd be really surprised. I think GED and others will I'd be surprised if we don't see that from DRC and stuff. Kind of like what a setup looks like. How does the identification process work? Y'all saw me just mimic out in my yard about an hour ago on this call, and I'm just guessing based on what I've heard. But if that would be good to do some scenarios so that you can show your proctors this is what it should look like. I like that. Mahalia had a note in there. Do you want to go through that, Mahalia?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, so Michelle had made a clarification about being able to use your AFLA funds for all services. And I think that's a good point, because right now as we're, kind of coming up on, we just got all the March numbers and we're looking at things, and we're really looking at people that are kind of like, I need civics money, but you still have AFLA money. So I just want to, make that distinction that if you've run out of civics money and you still have AFLA money, then you can spend your AFLA funds to support civics education and any of your ESL activities, including IET. So for those of you that are sort of in that boat, that's always an option. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to us and we can talk more about it.
Hey, I think we're getting to the end here. I know there's a question on where the recordings for these phone calls reside. Does anybody on my team know that? I'm asking.
Well, I think
I
they're talking
posted it.
about the recordings that we put on the T-call page underneath
Oh, okay.
that TWC meetings and calls.
Yes.
And I responded in the chat.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. This has been really good. We've gone an hour and a half, which is full bodied for us, and I like it. A lot of good feedback. If something's missing, y'all need more information, you can send us an email, of course. But take a look at that remote testing information. That's the next big shoe to drop. And that's going to consume a lot of our energy for the next couple of weeks for sure, maybe longer, into June, I think, as the high school equivalency tests come online. If I don't hear from you before the weekend, have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe. And don't be a stranger. Keep communicating with us. Thank you very much. And I'm going to sign off now.
Thank you, Anson.